Biathlon.
Sorry, I didn't have the recording on, folks. Help me remember, please, next week. Go ahead.
All right.
Larissa.
Sure. So I love sports biathlon, which is a country skiing and sports shooting. My hobbies is reading and classical music. My general knowledge is geography. I'm very much devoted my time to volunteer work. I'm actually running a small nonprofit organization that I started together with my colleagues from Georgetown. My innate personality, I'm an emotional decider. And informational process, how I process it, I am intuitive information a process gearing towards that with a slight sprinkle of sensed information. That's all about me. Thank you.
Thank you all. We're ready to move on. Anybody want to add something? Okay, back to work. So one of the things, just to tell a little story here, I knew that we needed experiential parts to this. There's no doubt about the workshop. And I put people into 8 or 10 person groups early on and discovered that the same thing that showed up when I let people do Q&A, several people wouldn't say anything and 1 or 2 people would dominate the conversation. So at the time I was doing a lot of work in China, and because I don't understand anything in Mandarin at all, I thought we needed some help organizing the groups. So we brought in facilitators who were trainers that my clients knew, who worked for free because they were happy to be in the workshop. And when I started listening in on them, I realized that they're teaching other material and nothing I could do to prevent that. So I just got annoyed and I said, send them all packing, send them all home in the middle of a workshop. And we didn't actually do that, but I tried organizing people into smaller groups, 3 or 4 person groups. This was incredible. Everyone shared, everybody talked. And so ever since that day, that's how I've done this. And if we were in a physical workshop, I'd be doing the same thing with you guys. But if you go do one of these workshops, the experiential work is really important. It's what people remember the most. And also it's these small groups, let everyone participate. Let's take a deeper look at this idea of social context. I showed you this sentence, and this was very powerful for me. This was
Are you presenting,
unique.
Charlie?
Yep.
Oh, we're not seeing your screen. Sorry.
Oh, really? Oh my. Okay. Let me see. Thank you. Where's the little gadget?
Of course. I wasn't sure if that was preamble, but then
no, it wasn't.
Since you were...
It was lack of Zoom competence. Okay, let me see here. Have we got it now?
Yep. Yes.
Good. Okay. Let's see if I can just get me on the screen. Well, I just got Nico. Well, I don't know. I'll just put this kind of like, well, I'll try and do better next time. Let me see here. That's probably the wrong choice.
Charlie, on the top right corner, there is a little button that says view.
Yeah.
If you will click on that, you will see the down menu, the side-by-side gallery. If you will click on side-by-side gallery.
Oh, can you see me doing this now?
Yeah.
Okay, that's where you want me to be, right?
You probably won't see yourself as well as all participants. Is that?
I just want to see me.
Okay.
Actually, I don't want to see me, but I think people who look at this video want to see me.
Sure, of course.
So if I, it's not picking me, it's picking you. I don't mind showing you, Larissa, but I'm going to be doing most of the talking. So how do I make it show me?
You need to at this point it looks like you clicked on a drop down menu, the side by side speaker.
Yeah,
So what you need is side-by-side gallery.
which one is that?
It's just literally says side-by-side gallery. If you click on the right at the top right corner, it says view. Do you see that?
No.
No.
I see,
Okay.
I see. Here's my choices here.
We're not actually seeing your
Are you not seeing the screen?
You
no.
can see your screen, but we're not seeing,
We're just seeing the
Oh,
presentation.
you're just seeing the slides and that's all?
Yeah. I
yeah,
think it's
your
all right.
presentation mode.
I see all of you and I see the slides.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
what I'm seeing too.
Maybe because I have a professional version, I don't know, but I had to have it.
Anyway, I'll just leave us off. In the past, it brought me up automatically. Anyway, we'll just go like this. I don't think anyone really needs to see me.
Charlie, we will try to do it offline between sessions. I can
Okay,
help you.
Good, thank you. Okay.
No problem.
So I talked about Diane Vaughn's book and how moving it was for me with the explanation of Challenger. And this sentence just speaks to me. It is unfortunate that the sociological explanation is the correct one, as these invisible forces elude remedy. And I talked about this earlier, and before the sentence said unacknowledged, now we've acknowledged them, but they remain invisible. So who is capable of measuring and managing invisible forces? It turns out physicists, that's what we do. So we're trained with the four forces of Mother Nature that two of you are quite familiar with, gravity and electromagnetism, and two you're probably not very much so. The strong force, which is about nuclear, holds nuclei together, and the weak force, which mediates radioactive decay. So I think the social context could be called a fifth force, or if you prefer, a field. By the way, with Einstein, one of the changes he made was the term force became out of vogue, instead fields. So the idea of a social context field as a fifth force. Now, those of you who tried to study this kind of physics know it's difficult and takes a long time. In my case, 7 years of graduate school. In the fifth force, you'll understand all you need to know at the end of our little presentation. So I was at the University of Colorado. I'm in the business school teaching my courses. And a professor walks in and says, what makes you think you can contribute to leadership, an area so many of us have studied? And I thought, that's a fair question. So I thought about it and I said, there's two differences between me and all the rest of the faculty in that department. The first is I've had jobs in the real world none of you had, and I've had pretty big jobs. And I'm also trained as a physicist, and we think differently. That's really, physics is more about, I think, a thought process methodology than the facts of the subject. So I thought about undergraduate school, and we used to joke with each other, saying the right coordinate system turns an impossible problem into two really hard ones. So there must be a coordinate system that can illuminate social context fields. The time I was reading business books, and you know the common business books, they're worse than useless, but I didn't know this yet. And they're all the same. They have little stories about how somebody else did something. And they have someplace a list of the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 things you're supposed to do. So I put these, I had the summers off. This is my sort of research work. I wasn't teaching in the summers. So I took the most popular books and I put the in things that each book recommended on white poster sheets and taped them around my office and began to look for a coordinate system in physics that could integrate these. Well, I failed completely. This after almost 2 months of work, I had zero progress. So I quit, and the next day I picked up the newspaper and there was a Dilbert cartoon. It said that every consultant makes his living with a 2x2 matrix. This is what's called Cartesian coordinates from Rene Descartes. And I said, I made this too hard. It's a 2x2 matrix, but which one? And by dumb luck, I was reading Jung's work on psychological types translated into English. He said something very, very powerful. He said, we build our personalities on innate processes, means present at birth, for two things: the information we prefer to use whether and the information the methodology we use for deciding. And I knew already there's two kinds of information. Intuition, it's kind of an unconscious integration of past experiences. There's a book by Gary Klein about this, and he talks about these experienced firemen that go into a house where the roof's on fire, and they say, we got to get out of here now. And the younger firemen said, we don't see any problem. We got to put this fire out. And the roof said, no, move now. And they ran out, and the basement was on fire too. So they sensed something was the matter. Then sensed information. That's just what we see with our register with our five senses. And I knew there's two ways we decide, using emotions or logic. And so physicists love simple. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. This really appealed to me. So I began to play with this. And what I realized was, if you take people and build their personalities on intuitive information and emotional deciding, they are naturally empathetic and appreciative. And I named this cultivating, and I called it green because appreciation grows people. If you're an emotional decider and like sensed information, oh, that's about emotions you're experiencing. That's about relationship. And I knew the most important relational need was to feel included. So I named it including, and I colored it yellow because I'd used up the other colors for better things, other primary colors. And you might think of the way a yellow flower attracts bees. The intuitive information and logical deciding, oh, that's home base for me. That's easy. We're naturally intellectual, conceptual, and we're future oriented, love thinking. Nothing energizes me like a new idea. And if you're in this very grounded place of logic and sensitive information, this is about process, systematic. And I called it orange, the way the orange sun organizes the solar system. So I tried to get people to use these names for many years, cultivating, including, directing, and it failed completely. So I finally gave up and used these colors, and everybody likes the colors and uses those. So I did a lot of work in China, and they asked me almost every workshop, why didn't you choose red for the directing dimension? And I said, well, the reason is because in the East, in China, red's a good color. In the West, it's not necessarily. People think of stoplights and fires, but I do have a way to harness the power of red. And what I do is every workshop, my wife packs red underpants. And so all workshops, I harness red power with my red underpants. So I told that story in a workshop in Shanghai with about 300 people there. Next morning, my translator says, they want to see the red underwear. And I said, what? I said, yep. So I turned sideways and pulled my pants down and showed them the red underwear. And what I forgot was that the Chinese are crazy with their cameras, their phones. And I went live on the Chinese social networks that evening with thousands of videos of me, the foreigner showing the red underpants. So in China, I'm not known for fixing Hubble, but the crazy foreigner wears red underpants when he trains. So anyway, I'm always looking for things that unify the material. What unification means to physicists is looking for broader principles that can reinforce and encompass the same thing. Einstein, for example, devoted his life to failed to try and unify fundamental physics with including gravity with electromagnetism and quantum mechanics. And so how many of you are familiar with Maslow's needs? And people raise their hands. They are very famous American psychologist. Always want you to have the most up-to-date data. And so here it is. This is the needs hierarchy for modern times. And we had an occasion in 2013 where a flood took out all of our utilities for 18 days. And sure enough, the biggest thing we missed was Wi-Fi. So I was showing this material to some people from, I think, Croatia, and I was in Frankfurt. They said, no, Charlie, there's a bigger need than Wi-Fi. I said, really, what is it? And they said, a charged battery. So more recently, it's been toilet paper during the COVID time. Anyway, the most basic needs are physiological: air, sleep, water, food. There's a thing called the rule of threes. You need air on a scale of 3 minutes. If you can't breathe, you don't think about doing your job. The next need is water and sleep. You need those on a scale of about 3 days. And finally, food, you need it on a scale of about 3 weeks. I actually did a vision quest, which means going into the mountains with nothing but water for a week, and discovered that after a couple of days, you don't even feel hungry anymore. Anyway, that's the deepest needs. The next need is to feel safe, an emotional need. And this has to do with your trustworthiness. And we're going to talk later about how you can ensure your trustworthiness. So for many years, I was teaching people to make a 4D request. And in a difficult situation, and we'll practice this later, you appreciate the people or the situation. Then you include the other person, make a sense of belonging. Then you can address reality with 100% commitment to come up with a realistic, optimistic future. Then finally, you ask for what you want. And so this actually, I was quite happy to see this aligned very well with the needs hierarchy. And you'll see this word responsibility. That's what my friends call a Charlie word. It's not a real word. I think of it as the ability to respond, and we'll find out that the way we lose that is by going into drama states, mindsets, toxic mindsets, and choosing to be accountable for what you do, what you fail to do, or what you ask others to do. So often in my workshops, people with small businesses, entrepreneurs say, how do I motivate people? I say, here's how you do it. You meet these needs, because what Maslow said, when this needs hierarchy is met, people go into a place of high motivation and performance that he calls self-actualization. If you fail to meet any of these needs, the whole thing crashes. I was surprised when I did this work to find out that the emotional needs were the most powerful. If you don't feel appreciated, you have no energy, you for anything. If you feel excluded, you'll act out anger in destructive ways. So emotions matter, folks. I guess you all knew that. So I'd like to ask you a question here. Would you automatically and unconsciously modify your behaviors in each of these contexts? Giving or receiving a marriage proposal, having dinner with your fiance's family, your bachelor or bachelorette party, or hijacked on your honeymoon. And if you behaved inappropriately for the context, you'd likely be sanctioned. In the US, if you said the wrong thing at the fiance's family dinner, you'd probably get a kick under the table, and the hijackers, they'd probably shoot you. So these are 4 different social contexts that if I had very primitive sensors on your body, I could likely tell which one you're in. So I often take an imaginary bar and I walk up to a workshop participant and say, this is really heavy, would you take it? And they hold it. And I say, now, holding the bar, can you tell if it's magnetized or not? And they say, typically no. And I said, well, give it back. And I take an act of taking the heavy bar and putting it aside. And so let's look at a magnetic field as an analogy to social context fields. How would you observe invisible magnetic fields? Well, you probably did this in the 3rd grade or so. What you did was you put a piece of paper on the metal bar, you sprinkled iron filings and tapped the paper, and we can see here it's clearly a dipole magnetic field. So what we've done is we've used the iron tracer particles to see the invisible field, the nature of the invisible field, the magnetic field. Now, the iron filings respond to everything that affects the magnetic field. So if I introduced another field into the magnetic field, say a permanent magnet, and moved it, it would also affect the tracers. So the tracer particles are measuring everything that affects the magnetic field, ambient magnetic field, whether it's the iron bar or anything else. This making sense so far? Silence. Okay. So how would you observe invisible social context fields? The answer is, go back to what we talked about earlier. You would observe people's behaviors, and you would be able to deduce from how people were behaving, which of these 4 fields they were in. So how would we do this in general? By the way, the behaviors similarly respond to everything that affects a social context field. So when you measure these fields with these behaviors, we're measuring everything any behavior would do to modify the field. So if we're going to measure behaviors to use them as tracer particles for social context fields, how do we pick them? Well, we go right back to the ones that address people's deepest needs, and that's exactly what we do. We measure with the tools that measure social context fields, we measure 8 behaviors, 2 in each of the 4 dimensions. So to summarize, a Jungian-inspired coordinate system analyzes social context fields into 4 manageable parts called dimensions. The 4 dimensions sequentially align well with the needs hierarchy. Behaviors are tracer particles for social context fields, enabling the most effective human development tool ever. So I'm going to talk about this some more, but I made a tool some years ago to measure these 8 behaviors, and also measured the behavioral norms of groups because we're so tribal. And we had about 200 teams with multiple measurements. We tracked and measured the improvement in social context for each iteration of this 15-minute 10-question tool, and found out that it was increased team performance an average of 4%. This is unbelievable. If you can do an ROI calculation for an aerospace team and you get a 4,000% return on every time you do this, this finding was so stunning, it led me to stop everything, write the manuscript for how NASA builds teams, and make all of our intellectual property free. And the ICF, International Coach Federation, gave us their PRISM Award, which normally goes to some place like Hewlett-Packard or Ernst & Young. A little tiny company got it because of these data. So I do a card check now. I'm going to bring you guys back on if I can do it, and say how we doing, or any comments or questions. Card check, hands, thumbs up.
Doing great. This is wonderful material.
I think the situational aspect of it, Charlie, is helpful. I had a similar experience of Nico when I looked at those colors, and I could put myself in different situations and find myself in different places. So that kind of pulled that thought together with what you just presented. It makes a lot more sense to me.
This is really a major goal of this activity, is to get you to be aware that, because you need to function in each of the 4 places at some time during the day. And under stress, people tend to go to home base. And mine's blue, and we'll talk more about this. But what happens is you minimize the diagonal, because, for example, if I'm most interested in what's intuitive and what's logical, I'm least interested in what's emotional, what's sensed. So under stress, if I'm not conscious of this, I start to disrupt relationships. You can watch this. Elon Musk is a 1D blue, Steve Jobs is a 1D blue. Bill Gates is a more 4D, but this is the whole point. So in a given day, there might be a moment when someone needs to feel appreciated by you, and an hour later, somebody needs to feel included. Then maybe sometime later, someone needs to see a vision for a hopeful future, so hope can give us some energy. Then we need fundamental organization. So the idea that you're able to think about all 4 and see yourself doing it is a really good thing. Okay, then. So now, I think you missed this, but every half hour we're going to get up and cleanse the toxins out of our blood that come from being stationary by moving. So on your feet. I personally like these knee bends because they energize the biggest muscles in your body.
Yep.
So every 30 minutes, get up and clear the toxins. I talked about this earlier. I got this from Gretchen Reynolds, who's the fitness editor for New York Times, in a book called The First 20 Minutes. So, and everybody in workshop seems to enjoy doing this, just to get out of your chair and move the blood, clear the toxins. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the material. You can continue to exercise if you want. This thing you may have heard of, sit still and learn, is nonsense. It's worse than nonsense. It's destructive nonsense. Are we seeing the
I
screen?
missed that. I missed that last comment. What was destructive nonsense?
Sit still and learn.
Oh,
You know, the school kids are told, sit still and learn. As humans, our evolutionary nature has been to learn while moving. You know, we moved most of the time. Our 2 million years of our genus, Homo, most of the day we're moving. We're not sitting. So anyway.
Yeah. They say sitting is new smoking.
Yep. So I want to talk about the context shifting worksheet. This is when I worked as a consultant, primarily for TRW, they're really smart people, and they only paid me to come work on a problem when they couldn't solve it.
Hey,
And
Charlie, I
Yeah.
think your slides aren't showing again.
oh my, okay, let me see what's going on here. I got to figure out how to do this. I never had this much trouble with this. Let me see. This is entirely operator error. Trust me. Uh, what's going on here? I don't see the little panel I need to see. Let me take this down. All right.
There it is.
Yeah. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so what I learned was that the TRW had a problem, and the context that they thought about it, it was insolvable. So I thought about Einstein, who said you cannot solve a problem with the level of thinking that created it. So I thought you cannot solve a problem in the context that created it. So I invented this thing called the context shifting worksheet, which I also call structured creativity. And this does effectively the entire workshop in about an hour or 90 minutes. So early on, I used to begin asking for plus delta feedback at the end of every night. Most people wait till the workshop's over to get the feedback. These were typically 3-day workshops, sometimes longer. So the plus means what worked for you today, and the delta is what would improve your experience tomorrow. And of course, there were things like more coffee and the air conditionings to this and that. But the one comment I got very frequently was, we don't want a generic workshop. We want one that's about us. So I got the idea to integrate the context shifting worksheet into the workshop. And so throughout the workshop, everybody processes a presenting dilemma with the tools. And so when you leave, not only do you hopefully understand the tools, but you have a new insights into a presenting difficulty. So the first thing is you put down the situation you're in, and that's the hardest part, because the situation has to be succinct. It has to be something that's broadly applicable. It has to be something that involves some kind of a human interaction. And so I'll show you how we do that with workshops in a bit, but that's the first step. Second thing you do is you write down the outcomes that you want. And this is much easier. Then we work through the emotions you're experiencing and the thoughts that are driving them. And these are I'll show you later, these two elements define a mindset or an attitude. This is the one that's limiting you. Then we shift the thoughts. You can choose your thoughts, and the emotions will follow to give you an empowering mindset. Then we work systematically through the 8 behaviors and come up with an action plan. So we'll be doing this throughout the workshop. So I did a lot of work with TRW. I won them, I'm going to guess, $20 billion of work they wouldn't have won otherwise. My biggest mistake was working for an hourly rate instead of some percent of the stuff I got for them. And what I did is I changed the customer's mindset to want to pick them. This is called confirmation bias. We did this because the way people think is they only register the facts that match the things they want things to be like. And don't we all do this? We sort of decide what we want to do and then select the facts to support it. If you want to see this in action, watch the two political parties have a conversation, and you'll see it in spades. It's very human. So I did a thing for them for James Webb Space Telescope, which, as you know, just launched. And so the proposal team engaged me. I said, "What's the situation you're in?" They said, "We're in a tough competition for $1 billion contract that ended up costing like 10 billion that we must win, and we're losing." That's a good situation. They're just throwing money down the toilet. So I want to think about a simple problem statement that we can work with you guys through the workshop. And this is how I'd work with the team. I only work normally with teams. I'd ask the team leader, what keeps you awake at night? And I solicit these situations on 3x5 cards, and I get things like this. We cannot tell our truth in this team without fear of retribution. We don't trust each other. We cannot communicate with each other or with our customers who are angry. We cannot increase resources. Or the one I work in Publix in China is cannot communicate or motivate my children. And this works because almost everybody, the typical clients were like in their 40s or so, and most of them had children or had relatives with children or had encountered children. So that's what I did in the Publix. So the way I do this with teams is I get a flip chart and do brainstorming. I write candidates on the flip chart. And brainstorming rules means you can't comment on anybody's suggestion, just simply record them. Then I would combine similar items. This is called organizing by affinity. And the reason I do that is we're going to vote. And I like voting because people will not vote for something they'll argue for. And that use this typical US style counting procedure to rack up the votes. Then look at what the team wants to do, confirm that almost everybody can do it. And then we start working through the context shifting worksheet in your workbooks. So let me ask you, what would you guys like to work on? And you got your mics on? Well, let me.
Yeah, we're I think we're all pondering. I mean, the challenge is, right, we're not necessarily a team, so we're not.
Yeah, exactly. So by the way, we're going to work something as a team, and you can work your own thing on your own worksheet as you like. So you could work like, how do I establish a successful fitness business, if that's what you want to work on. But the team, we need something that everyone can resonate with.
Yeah.
I found the children one worked really well in China because people have a lot of energy around children, but I suspect my children are 50 years old, so I don't. Any suggestions?
Did they listen to you at 50 years old?
Say again?
Do they listen to you at 50 years old?
About the same they always did.
There's still a relevant problem or situation to process.
Actually, one
Listen to mine now.
you know. So we can talk about I cannot relate with anything you've got real world experience with. Right? I cannot relate with difficult customers or clients.
That would actually be a really good one for me, Charlie.
With others.
Charlie, that would actually be a really interesting one for me, and I'll just kind of share this experience that I had at my last consulting engagement and just see if other people have similar situations that might resonate. But basically, my expertise was not trusted or understood in some ways, and I think I reacted to that in a way that, you know, is common. And as one of Tanya's coworkers has said, feels really great in the moment because you're coming from the ego and you essentially smack them in the face, but it didn't it didn't elicit an effective response. that would, I don't quite know how to frame that.
I think that might be a good one. People don't understand or acknowledge my expertise. Would that be one that everybody?
That's a great way to summarize that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the precipice of taking a consulting gig where that is exactly part of what they're bringing me in for. So I have a similar concern. And so this would be useful personally to me.
I see Matt shaking his head. How about Larissa? Does this one sound like one you'd like to do?
Yeah, I would love to do it. Yeah, I guess it's a common thread that basically repeating Tanya's and Nat words, that I have my consulting clients, and when you suggest them, when they say we all for out of the I don't know, out of the box solutions to our problem, and when you're coming with that solution, they not necessarily they're not necessarily excited about this. So yeah, that's a common thing. So when you're walking in with your expertise, and it's not necessary, if you're not part of that community, they're not necessarily recognizing you, but this is part of the problem.
Nico, how about you? Is this one that speaks to you?
Absolutely part of my life all the time, especially with the bigger systems as well, like universities and churches and so on, everywhere.
So let's
I
see if
think-
we can, go
I
ahead.
think from my perspective, Charlie, too, if we could weave in the difficult personality that's usually on the other end, because that's been part of my experience as well. To Nat's point, I ended a very lucrative consulting agreement after a 1-hour meeting with the CEO one time because I have dealt with that kind of personality before and I was going to be successful. And he was stunned. He kept calling me back saying, "I really admire that you put all that away." And yeah, my wife joked. She said, "Yeah, he's like the boyfriend that you break up with that thinks you're great after you broke up." But that seems to always kind of fold in there too. You're dealing with a difficult
I've done the
personality.
same thing, and I think it's one of the really big pluses of your own business. You don't have to work with unpleasant people. And when I worked
Absolutely.
at NASA, that was not an option. Trust me, you know?
Right.
So
Yeah.
how about you want to do a two-pronged thing? We don't want to spread it too thin, but people reluctantly recognize my expertise and choose to work collaboratively with me. Anyone want to propose some wording here? We want to get the wording very precise.
What you said was really good. The first way that you summarized it, Charlie, I thought was excellent. I unfortunately didn't write it down.
People fail to recognize my expertise and contribution.
Yeah, I think that was pretty
work for
close.
everybody.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah. Okay, let's all write that down on your context shifting worksheet. I gotta find a piece of paper here.
Are you writing the second part?
And contribution. Yeah, so I've written.
People fail to recognize my expertise and ability to contribute.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were including the and work collaboratively part.
You like the two-pronged thing? Okay.
I do.
So let's say people fail to recognize my expertise and work collaboratively with me. Does that sound good?
Yeah,
That-
yeah, sounds good.
Good,
Yeah, that works for me as
Good.
well.
good, okay. So now we want to talk about outcomes that you would want to have. What outcomes would you like?
That people work collaboratively with me so that we can achieve
Yep,
stated goal that we all have shared interest in.
Yeah.
How about some more? Wonder, should we write these in the chat room?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Let's, let me find that.
You wanna type that one in?
Oh,
So everyone can write in your own here.
not, this is,
Do you see it?
Yep.
So go ahead and Tanya, type yours in.
I gotta get
we're adjusting our workspace here real quick. Looks like you're in there. Okay. Go for it.
Oh,
Sure.
close enough.
Give it a shot. We'll brainstorm. Like that.
How about that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So everybody add in your own.
And this is all brainstorming, so there's no,
We're just brainstorming. Yep, and there's no, this is brainstorming phase. When I do these in workshops, I might fill 2 flip charts with these. How about, I have increased enjoyment doing my work.
I know where I was going.
How about I feel appreciated by my clients?
Now,
I was just trying to think of one.
deliver more than what was asked.
Work in a fun and rewarding environment. Yes. People would trust my expertise enough to trust the innovative solutions I propose. Good ones. Okay. A sense of fulfillment for all involved when project completed. Yes. To impact mega systems, I need to be trusted and accepted. This provides synergy for collaboration. Good.
More efficient. Greater efficiency.
In fact, let me pause for a minute here. I should have gone, you can all see the screen still, right?
Mhm.
So I should have gone through the example. I'm rusty doing workshops of the proposal team, what happened. So the first thing they said when I asked them, they said, we want to win. And I said, that's all you want? You don't want a good contract? You don't want a fair profit? You don't want an arrangement that will let you maintain a work-life balance? Oh yeah, we want all those things too. So now I should have done that before. So now we're doing the group work and we're using the chat room instead of the flip chart. We're able to move past difference to achieve a result none of us could have created to get together.
Yeah, and I meant to say created separately.
I got what you meant.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
I got it.
I can't edit those comments, so I had
I see. Okay.
to do the asterisk.
Don't worry. I got the sense of it. So instead of writing this in the workbook, we're doing it on the chat. Everybody's done at least one. Are we good to move on?
I think so.
Did everyone do one?
Charlie, I was just like offline for a while, so I'm not just sure. Are we at the which question on the contact shifting sheet are we now?
We're looking at the outcome you want. The outcomes you're 100% committed to realizing in the context of the situation.
Right.
We're writing these in the chat room. By the way, there's an important point here. these have to be outcomes you deeply want. If they're not, the process won't work. I did a few workshops up in Canada using just the context shifting worksheet. And the guy said, well, I did it, but I don't think it's going to work. And I said, how committed are you to this outcome? He said, not really. I said, well, there you are. You know, it won't, these have to be things you want. This is wanting these outcomes gives you the power to go through this. Have we got enough, everybody?
I think so.
Yeah, it feels
Okay.
pretty good for me.
So we're going to go back into the workshop material now. And what we've done so far is we've negotiated our agreements. And Matt, you might want to go read those charts or read that material. Look at the idea of social context. And now we're going to work through mindsets, which are everything. And you heard Nico mention he wants to shift mindsets in Africa. These are springboards for action. And we're going to show how you can analyze. Again, physics is mostly about analysis, which means separate into simpler parts. Analyze the idea of mindset into emotions and thoughts.
Can I ask a quick question, Charlie?
Yeah,
Before you move
sure.
on from that? I've always been curious about why you chose to shade those two circles with vertical versus horizontal. Is that because the emotions work on that axis and then the storylines work on the other axis?
So emotions are multicolored, as we'll see, and storylines are green or red.
Ah, thank you.
So the agreements are about, the yellow is about the fact this is about our relationship and our trustworthiness. That's why agreements is yellow. Social context has all four parts. Good question. Emotions we'll see are multifaceted, and storylines are either red, meaning they take us away from our outcomes, or green, taking us to our outcomes.
Cool.
Thank you for noticing that.
Everything has a purpose with you, Dr. Pellion. I've learned that over the years.
Emotions, emotional intelligence. I kind of like this definition for this kind of obscure thought. The ability to understand, accept, manage yours and others' emotions. Is the ability to make emotions work for you rather than against you. The English word emotion comes from the Latin verb movere, to move. So I was asked to join the Drucker Institute in Hong Kong, and they flew me over there, and I did some material with them. And they asked me to put in Peter Drucker quotes in my slides. So I went and looked at, I'd read his books a long time ago. His earlier books were pretty interesting. And I found a lot of things that really resonated with me. Your job as a leader is to take care of your energy and help orchestrate the energy of others. By the way, the Drucker Institute wanted to ask me how to modify my material so it'd be acceptable on the mainland. It turned out I had a bigger business base in China than they did, and they're $1 million organization. Once they learned that, I never heard from them again. But anyway, the quotes stayed. But mine is, your job as leaders to take charge of your emotions and help orchestrate the emotions of others. There are 5 emotion groups: glad, mad, sad, scared, and love. Have you felt them all at work? Expressed them all at work? How about this? They may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So we're going to look at how to use each of the groups. Glad group enlivens, and it does something else much more powerful. It motivates people to give you what you want, and we'll see how that works. Mad can be very useful to energize action if you use it in the right way, which means combine it with caring. Sad is very effective to move through losses, and I'll give you an example of moving through the Hubble loss with this. And believe it or not, melancholy is a place of very high creativity. Scared is useful to alert you to impending catastrophe, and also motivates when you use it, combine it with love group. And love is so important. We've got a whole section on this. I don't call it love, I call it appreciation, because that's a better word for businesses. I want to take you back to one of our agreements from the first session, I asked you to choose on you focusing you. And I'm going to keep reminding you of that, because if we were talking about this during breaks, you'd come up to me and say, well, I don't know, I can't make this work because so-and-so does thus and thus, and I have to go back to the workshop about changing other people is down the hall. This is the workshop about you changing you. So I mentioned I've studied somatic psychology, and I knew for a long time that emotions were body sensations that the brain interprets and names as emotions. This work I was not aware of, and then usually when I cite something like this, it's got to be, doesn't just be on the internet. This is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Scientists. Some Scandinavian scientists understood this, and they gave people blank papers from many, many countries and asked them to color in where the emotions manifested themselves. And GLAD group that is very intense. You can see the bright areas in the head and the middle chest. It's very energizing, and that's a good reason why you want to live in that space. It gives you lots of energy. MAD group, it mostly energizes your arms. Why is that? While you're getting ready to defend yourself or hit somebody. SAD group doesn't energize much of anything. I couldn't find the image for SAD, but the one for depression is just completely black. So I put this in here with the little red thing. Scared manifests in your chest, and love group is more energizing than anything else, and that's why you want to live in the space of gratitude and appreciation. So what did these have in common? Music, I'm an Eric Clapton fan, much more so classical music, sporting events, movies, and office drama. They all generate energizing emotions, and we like feeling energized. Joshua Bell, music is about expressing feelings. Eric Clapton sings the blues. Sporting events, you have all the emotions, don't you? In the workplace, all the emotions. Movies, all the emotions, sorry. Office drama, all the emotions. So I don't have a clock visible. It must be, is it almost exactly 10?
We're close, 9:57.
Okay, so let me pause for the day here, and we'll continue this. Let me go back to screens for any comments or questions before we move forward. Was today a good session?
Yes.
They've all been great. I think.
Just-
Go ahead, Nico.
I just want to check the last chat. Is that from Nat? We are able to move past differences to achieve. Is that the last
Yes.
one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I missed them. Thank you.
Welcome. So the thing I would say, Charlie, is as you know, I've gone through these slides on my own. It's actually so, at least for me, it's so much more powerful and ingestible hearing your anecdotes, hearing some of the little background, and then being able to interact with you. So it's thank you again for doing this. It really makes a difference.
Agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I always surprised that although people have different experiences and we all have different professions and we act in a consulting capacity in different fields, but we have so much similarity in what we're experiencing as consultants. So
Right.
it's always
Good.
interesting.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment, and I'm speaking about the South African context, so it's obviously different, the outsider, as usual, as always, you know. But even my connection with the American community is not always perceived here in a positive light, you know. It's just like almost like a threat. And this is now my observation, and I have to take accountability for it, and I have to put it to the test. But it's like being an outsider all the time. So you're challenging the current systems, the mega systems, as I've said. And, you know, and then most of the time I'm so aware of emotional immaturity from academic people, from in every system. But then I always have to evaluate, you know, my own perceptions. But one way of doing things like that, this is the fun part of it, is, you know, my imagination. So you referred a couple of times to Einstein. So I went to Princeton first as a student, and after that as a lecturer, and you know that was a complete different situation. Now you walk into colleagues' offices and they ask you all sorts of questions, and they told you I was actually intimidated by you, this and that at that stage, you know, when I was still a student, and I thought, what the hell is going on? But my biggest partner in Princeton used to be, well, it still is, Einstein. So my accommodation was literally like, say, 600 yards from where Einstein lived until his death. And I walked there so many times and I had conversations with him, and he challenged my thoughts. You know, he was like this external point of challenging me. So I'm always smiling whenever Einstein comes into the picture.
Good to hear.
I wrote a lot about it and shared it with a lot of people.
Thank you.
A group that I have. So it's not just for me, I'm sharing it with others, and we're having a lot of fun actually with it.
Great. Thank you. And keeping my agreements, we're going to stop now, 1 minute late, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Meanwhile, if anybody wants to converse with me about this, just drop me an email and we can do a private Zoom.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good week, everybody.
Yeah.
Great session. Thank you.
Have a good
Yes.
week, everybody.